Good morning, folks. Got my coffee, got my dry herb vape, and this is for DMT. This one is for a little ganja. That's how I like to start my morning these days. Oh, I mean, I did have a bowl of DMT a little while ago, but, you know, that's kind of like, for me, I guess, waking up and taking an antidepressant, just kind of gives me the right headspace, and shows me there's hope in the day. Now, I wanted to take not only you, but me back. Let's see, 27 now, so roughly 10 years to when it was probably one of the worst places in my life. That led me to come to some horrible conclusions about humanity, and it took a long time to deprogram a lot of those beliefs. Excuse me. Now, when I was a teenager, see, I have a number of chronic pain disorders. Most of them are nerve pain, central nervous system sensitivity, fibromyalgia, the big question mark of a disorder, right? The symptoms manifested in a very, very strange way early on, and it actually affected my vision. It's very bizarre. Like it felt like I was on LSD all the time for years. I was surprisingly calm throughout that. And see, the thing was, I was getting into heroin around the time that I had received this diagnosis of HPPD, bipolar, autism, what else? Borderline personality disorder. All things that have been overturned since the autism took literally one day to overturn. The others, not so easy. Bipolar, that was because I was shooting coke and heroin, and it put me into psychosis, and that's the only time I've ever experienced psychosis in my life. What I do have is major depressive disorder, but that was only diagnosed after I spent my college fund on a private clinic. Sent me up with a neuropsych, and they diagnosed me. But after receiving the HPPD diagnosis and going, can you help me, please, government, medical system, and all your wisdom, help little old me. Well, their idea of help was to throw me in a psych ward for a month. Couldn't leave. I got locked up for going on a 15-minute walk to try and bum a cigarette. But despite them saying, you'll be back in the world once your tenure here at the wonderful hotel psych ward is over. Speaking of which, there was a real Hotel California vibe to that, because I wasn't released. No, I was forcefully sent to a very secure facility that I refer to as a medium security prison, because I was the youngest person there by far, and everyone else was 50 or over on average. I stark raving mad, and most of them had like pretty lengthy rap sheets, ex-cons. And yeah, I spent 3 years of my life at this place, and it was fairly traumatizing, to say the least. And you know, I was watching from afar on computers as my friends grew into themselves, as they matured. And they certainly weren't stopping to try and, hey, tell them some hard times, we're gonna help them. No, they're too and stuff, which is fine. I get it. No one wants that to go to fucking mental institution, but I mean, still, that was very crushing. So, after 2 years at this facility, they tried to do one of two things. One, they wanted to send me to an SRO. And SROs, for those who don't know, government housing for people who are usually like at risk, people who are addicts and really are considered hopeless by a system. I've been to SROs. They're pretty scary places. Not somewhere someone who's under 18 should be living, seriously. Even though I know there are youth facilities, I've also been to one back when I lived on the streets. But, yeah, so the only other decision was to go to the Riverview grounds, and for those who don't know, Riverview is a notorious mental institution not Vancouver, outside of Vancouver. Kind of more like a club. And it's, I believe it was a sanatorium for, like TB or potentially Spanish flu, something like that. The grounds are massive. The place looks like something out of Silent Hill. I mean, it's very creepy. I see why it's such a popular spot for filming. But, anyways, I chose to go there. So, I spent some time there, and the facility I was at was nice, especially in contrast to this other place. It was an improvement, but I still had no autonomy. I had no real abilities to go out into the outside world for very long, and I also, these people clearly had no faith in me or anyone else there. It was very, very disheartening. The nice thing was everyone who worked there, for the most part, were really, really beautiful. Not just physically, but personality-wise, young women. My personal counselor, I got very close to her. She was only a couple of years older than me. And, she actually had studied Adlerian psychology, something that I had done in conjugate with this fellow, Jim Skinner, who started Adlerian psychology in BC. And so we had a lot in common, because that I would spend every night showing her music, because she never heard bands like Tool or Deftones. So that was cool. Sure. The only other positive of this place was that there were very eerie walks we would take early in the morning when the fog would be low. You see all these big, dilapidated old institutional buildings, and they had these red lights inside them. I honestly think they were just how there's a fire exit sign in certain places. You don't see them as much as you used to, but because there's so much glass in these buildings, it would reflect into the rooms and cause this little red glow, which is kind of cool, kind of creepy, kind of weird, kind of whatever. But the neatest part of those walks was actually there's one more good thing that happened. Reminded me, but I'll get into that in a second. On these walks, we'd go to this place that had no name. It was just called the Secret Garden because it was just this little garden, little oasis amongst all this old industrial buildings, detritus. It's an oppressive atmosphere, so there's an oasis here. And the thing was, it was always very well maintained. Every day it was like someone went in, just clipped here and there, fed the fishes. There are koi fishes in a little pond. And, we never saw anyone. Now, there's a little shack that looked like a worker may have used it 30, 40 years ago. All the equipment was rusted and cobwebs and everything, but you never saw anyone. Not that I'm saying it's a ghost or another dimension or anything. I don't believe in that stuff. It's just cool fact. And I went there again with friends a little while ago. Just urbex, urban exploration, and couldn't find it. I took the exact same route. Couldn't find it. Just try as we might. Yeah, one other good thing that reminded me is on these walks I got fairly close to the only person there who was close to my age. I won't say her name. She's 5 years older than me, and we kind of hit it off. We oddly bonded over a very traumatic event that happened at the last facility, and that made us both pretty raw with guilt. But before that happened, I started to become very isolated, very closed off. Spent all the time on the computer, reading, researching, building an ideology, basically. Because I didn't know who I was, and I was also, experiencing kind of the start of my depression on top of, what's it called, PAWS, post-acute withdrawal symptom. Because the thing is, if you stop using heavy drugs like heroin, and I was using typically heroin and benzodiazepines, I've actually prescribed a lot, fatal amounts of benzodiazepines for a long time. 15 2 milligram clonazepams, that's 30 milligrams of clonazepam. That's an overdose for most people. Twice a day when I was less than 18. But not the worst of the stuff they gave me, that's for sure. But that's another story for another time. So yeah, in this place where I was losing all hope in humanity, and certainly had no hope in myself. I felt like I was detached from the world, and all I had was the internet. The internet was honestly more real to me at the time than my surroundings. And so I did some research, just looking into, Ruby Ridge, which was a terrible, terrible event. Looking into Waco, again, tragedy. Not going to get into the minutiae. It's controversial, right? But that led me to discover, Timothy McVeigh and his fucking atrocious acts. And there's an odd part of me who, I think identified with him in a very weird way, because I became very misanthropic, and I do still believe the world's grossly overpopulated, but for a while I was trying to think, hey, maybe eugenics is a fucking answer. Not, race-based eugenics, just get rid of the stupid people kind of thing. Still not ethical. I'm still a misanthrope. I hate humanity. I don't hate people on an individual level. I just hate what we're doing collectively to the planet and to each other. I think that's fair. I'm included in that. Anyways, I just went down this rabbit hole of kind of alt-right neo-Nazi type beliefs, where those ideas of, okay, we gotta get rid of the stupid people, it started to warp into, race-based stuff, because racists like to put out a lot of, either false statistics or, very misconstrued statistics about race-based intelligence. Say the amount of black people in prison, which, it's fairly obvious to me is a result of systematic racism, but, racists, don't consider things like that. And I never became a full-blown racist. I certainly I would play football with the East Indian security guard there every few days. Like, I never used a racial slur against someone. You know, I did when I was a kid. We'd jokingly do that as friends, but never with malice. No, I'm not hurt at the end of the day, put it that way. But I was, like, in my head, I was just, these boys were whirring around, and I still did, I hung out with the counselors, gorgeous blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who, ironically, I suppose I was, kind of becoming a bit of a Nazi in my own head, but I didn't consider that at the time. I just thought she was drop-dead gorgeous, really cool, and, really down-to-earth. Anyways, so really the straw that broke the camel's back for me was reading the Turner Diaries all the way through. And I gotta say, that is the most, and I love Cormac McCarthy. I'm not saying he's racist in any fucking way. Cormac McCarthy is kind of the opposite of racist. I think he is portraying historical events that actually happened, just with a fictional spin. Blood Meridian was my favorite book at the time, so I loved gore. I loved crazy, tragic, just violent things, not because I was getting off to it or anything, just because I loved horror and shit. It was fun. Blood Meridian genuinely did disturb me. But the Turner Diaries, despite probably having less violence, or at least less disturbing violence than Blood Meridian, it really sickened me. The book is essentially, it's written by this guy who's a well-established Nazi in the States. He, had marches, protests, and ethno state, all this. You've heard it, the spiel before from these fuckers. Now, the Turner Diaries it's set in this alternate history where essentially guns are made illegal in the States. Second Amendment abolished, and they do kind of with like they did in Britain, where they're no guns for you, no guns for the cops either. So the cops in it have knives and shit, but it's made out to be sort of a Jewish plot. Goes on, of course. Do you expect anything less? And so, it's, basically this guy gets sick of it, and he buries his guns, and he pulls them out, and, he starts this revolution with a bunch of other racists, and a bunch of really nasty shit happens. And, I could see this actually being a good book if it wasn't, shoving these awful ideologies down your throat and targeting black people and Jewish people in the story. If it was written kind of Mad Max, crazy punks versus just gangs or whatever, it could have been a good story. Could have. He's not a terrible writer in terms of his quality of writing. But he is very egotistical, that's for sure. The character is obviously based on himself, and they just kind of brag about themselves, and it goes on and on and on. But yeah, anyway, so this revolution happens, and there's just really terrible events in it. They're hiding out in a warehouse in one bit, and these junkies that are all black, with a white girl who I guess is a prostitute or something. They drive by, and these guys, because they want a place to shoot up, so they go into this warehouse where Turner and his buddies are transporting some guns or something like that. And so they immediately detain them, throw them on the ground, and they're fuck, what are we gonna do? We can't let them go, they'll tell the cops. And So their lovely solution is to bash their brains in with a pipe, because they don't want to waste a bullet on them. Yeah. Trust me, that is not the worst story, or part of the book. Not the worst story in the book. Sorry, words are hard on THC. But yeah. So like, and it got to the point where like they're hanging it's mostly white women. You know, not because men never mix races or mix with races in terms of sex. It never happens. So they find all these white women after they convince all the white guys in the military to overthrow the rest of the military, and so now they're really, really powerful, right? And yeah, so basically they just start hanging these women who like maybe once slept with an Asian dude from lampposts, and they're putting signs on them saying race traitors, and yeah, deplorable. Beyond deplorable, you know, like 1920 style lynching, you know, strange fruit everywhere, if you will. And of course, the story culminates with them taking over the White House and nuking the rest of the world, including themselves. So, what a great plan! What a wonderful, wonderful plan! And yeah, I read that and I was like, oh, so this is what they want for the world? This is not exactly what I was talking about when I was talking about, you know, reducing overpopulation a bit. Yeah. And so, and then I also, and the other thing was, like, watching people on 4chan have discussions, or try to have discussions, I'll put it that way. It would basically just, you know, one person asks a question, everyone else just rips on that person. The next people come in and dogpile on the last person, even though they're just like unpleasant place. And I was like, no. You know, I don't really have no friends and nothing to do. I do not want this to be my crowd. And so that started a process, and you know, another thing was I started dating this girl, you know, dating, if you will, at the facility, and you know, I toned it down because she just wouldn't have any of that shit, which, you know, perfectly reasonable. I wouldn't have any of that shit today. But the thing is, I didn't stop overnight. Like, maybe, and this was when I was, you know, 19, roughly, 18, 19. I, you know, finally, it was like, you know, people like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are dangerously wrong and arrogant in what they say. People like Joe Rogan are, you know, kind of idiots, you know, and intellectual dark web, Jordan Peterson, you know, this guy who's clearly a crook and is playing on people's insecurities, so they spend money on him. You know, Jordan Peterson, clean your room, which, you know, is like, I actually kind of agree with that. I think in a metaphorical way, and also in, you know, just if you have a sanctuary that's open and that is not covered in detritus, I mean, you can probably think more freely and have a more stable environment. Maslow's hierarchy page. It's very simple shit. But, like, I've seen, Zoom calls or whatever that he does. And his office or his room is a fucking mess. So he is a hypocrite in the biggest way possible. But, anyways, I believed in all these guys, and, sorry, my speaker just died. And yeah, it was a road of deluding myself, you know, like really having to bend my typically pragmatic nature to fit these absurd narratives that were being pushed, and these like very hateful narratives. And I went through the process of sort of deprogramming myself from that, and like I also struggled over through my early 20s with homelessness, addiction, very, very hardcore addiction. Experienced the worst things in my life, but like for example, for a long time I was like a very staunch pessimist. I still kind of am. I still think there's merits to that. The book Conspiracy Against the Human Race has got some really great points in it. Is honestly True Detective season 1 that got me into pessimism. But my pessimism back then was fueled by hate, not just, okay, well, maybe the world isn't as sparkly as we think it is. And also, pessimism and depression just go hand in hand, honestly. Yeah, like, I think the two things that like brought me out of it, no, three things. One, I decided to go, I'm gonna listen to some lefty commentators, some libs. I'm gonna listen to both sides, keep an eye on them. And then, I started listening to channels like ContraPoints, H-Bomber guy, We're in Hell. I absolutely love him. He's hilarious, but very well researched, unlike these fucking doofuses on the right. ContraPoints, really, really almost academic reporting, basically. Not that they're necessarily news channels, but they cover modern day events. And the other thing is, I did acid on it last Christmas. I've done acid over 200 times. Me and acid get along really well. But I thought a lot, and I really, really rewired how I see everything and how I see myself and my place in things, and realized that, hey, weird way, I'm kind of like a communist and not in the Stalin fucking Iron Curtain, order, whatever it was, where he purged his ranks and gulags and shit. It's not Maoist fucking communist. Just, I believe that there is enough land and resources on this planet for us to all live independently and to have not necessarily an abundance of stuff, but enough to get by. And I think that's fairly, at least I think, more synonymous with communist ideologies than any other place on the political spectrum. Mind you, I did the Pew test, and it said left-leaning libertarian. And I'm also a big fan of Robert Anton Wilson, which is one of my favorite people who ever lived. I like the idea of libertarian socialism, so that's what I kind of identify as, which puts me on both sides of the spectrum. And in these very polarized days, just telling that to people, it confuses the fuck out of them. But yeah, now I also realized that day that I also kind of into men as well as women. I've had gay experiences, but I worked through very, very intense trauma because I believed for a long time that I was raped by men. And in retrospect, I don't necessarily think that was the case. I think I was reciprocating a lot, but he did take advantage of me by feeding me too much alcohol and MDA to the point where I blacked out. Came to he's doing this thing, and so yeah, like but it wasn't as bad as I had made it out to be, and I think I was just denying the fact that I do have somewhat of an attraction to men. Definitely not as strong as women. Like, I don't watch gay porn or anything, but some men, hey, that guy's handsome. But anyways, yeah, so like now it's interesting because I watch, commentators from both sides of the spectrum. But here's the thing, like, yeah, I have kind of the inverse perspective of what I had before, which is I watch, more so lefties, or comrades. I think the comrades are the most well-informed and, like, fair and honest in their videos. Also, they have a wicked sense of humor. But I watch the right as well. Every now and again, the right conservatives are, the fucking code word for fucking modern conservative. What is it? Classical liberal. Fuck people who say they're classical liberal. It's the most dishonest thing in the world. Being hyperbolic, but it is fucking, like, pretty, like, unauthentic and, like, a bit of a double speak, if I'm using that term correctly, which I may not be. But anywho, I watch those guys, and yeah, like I said, inverse situation. It's like I watch them, and I just, like, what they're saying is really pissing me off. But I gotta keep an eye on them. Like, I know what's going on. There's, like, some of these guys want to break off from the States and, start their own little section of the States. Not, like, I don't go so far to listen to the Nazi guys anymore, but, like, so I'm not talking ethno-state, I'm talking to Trumpers who want their own America, which is very American, by the way. But, yeah, anyways, I'm proud to say that I'm not only clean of drugs like heroin, yes, I smoke a ton of the herb, and I do a lot of psychedelics, but I did, like, almost for medical reasons. You can feel free not to believe me, I don't care, but, yeah, clean of hard drugs, stop smoking cigarettes, still use my, my little, robot dicks here, sucking the D in my robot overlord, because, what's it called, Rocco's basilisk is gonna get us one day, so I gotta suck some robot dick, right? Because that's totally happening. Rocco's basilisk. Cool theory. Kind of bullshit, I think, in terms of, like, actually happening. So those Pascal's wager type things, but I digress. So now, anyways, like, I feel like I'm fully deprogrammed from that, and, like, I am the person I want to be, and I am a hell of a lot happier than I was when I was in this black iron prison of a world run by, or not run, but run by Jews. Actually, yeah, sure. Not that I fully believed that ever, but I was kind of getting there. Not for long. This, this all happened in under a year, but, and populated by degenerates, which I think that still may be true, but not in the sense that I believed back then. I don't think, degeneracy is something that's, like, exclusive to any group of people. I think degenerates are just kind of all over the place in every little sect, every class, every race. Like, it's just human beings do terrible things. Human beings also do great things, and unfortunately, because I do still, like, foster some ideas of pessimism, it's hard to see the goodness in humanity a lot of the time, but I'm trying. I am trying. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this long-winded ADD rant about one of the proudest accomplishments of my life that no one knows about. Well, sayonara, comrades, and not just communist comrades, in the real sense of the word. And I say, please, please, please operate from a place of trying to not judge, but when someone does something that pisses you off, go, what if the roles were reversed? Admit to yourself, you don't know why they're doing what they're doing. You don't know what happened just before that. The week before that. There could be just cause for, whatever, for cutting you off, or brake checking you, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, just try to operate from a place of compassion. I think compassion truly means putting yourself in the shoes of others. Yeah, let's try to be good to each other, and more importantly, way more importantly, because I'm not about anthropocentrism, humans being above everything else on the planet. Be good to the planet. Please, go out of your way to recycle. Let's, as a species, go out of our way to find a better way to recycle that doesn't pollute the fucking atmosphere so much. And, just plant trees, volunteer nature reserves, and so forth. And you can accuse me of not practicing what I'm preaching, but I do a lot of these things, and I volunteer at animal shelters, and I do my best to recycle absolutely everything. But anyways, I just wanted to share this, and yeah. So long, friends.